que se controlen. Ahí se Señor, hemos visto una de las cuestiones más difíciles y más tristes en nuestra vida.
27 entries, 7 levels. This is an iceberg of the most disturbing moments ever aired on live TV. We'll begin with the unsettling and gradually uncover broadcasts so horrifying, it's hard to believe they were even real. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Nancy Kerrigan. On January 6, 1994, Nancy Kerrigan, a top U.S. figure skater poised to compete in that week's national championships, finished practice at Detroit's Cobo Arena and walked toward the locker room. The camera crew filmed her exiting the ice, then stopped recording. But then, a man in a black jacket appeared from behind the crew, approached Nancy from behind, and struck her right knee with a collapsible baton. Nobody saw his face as he fled through the shattered glass door, leaving Nancy crumpled on the floor, screaming, "Why? Why? Why?"
Why? I don't know, some hard black stick. Something really, really hard.
The attack left Nancy with severe bruising but no broken bones. However, she had no choice but to withdraw from the championships held the next day, while her rival, Tonya Harding, secured gold and a path to the Olympics, which was all but guaranteed to Nancy before the incident. The incident was ruled a random assault, but within days the incident unraveled into a major conspiracy. Investigators soon traced the assailant, identifying him as Shane Stant, a 22-year-old hired through a chain of connections that originated with Harding's ex-husband, Jeff Gillooly. In mid-December 1993, Gillooly and Harding's self-proclaimed bodyguard, Sean Eckard, had plotted to eliminate Nancy as competition. They enlisted Stant, who initially stalked Nancy at her Massachusetts training rink, but aborted the plan. When Nancy traveled to Detroit for the Nationals, Stant followed, armed with a $59 baton purchased days earlier. By January 12th, Eckhardt confessed to the FBI, revealing Gillooly's role and implicating Tonya Harding. Phone records show that Tonya had called a skating writer days before the attack to confirm Nancy's training location, which she later passed along to Stant. Gillooly later testified that Tonya had encouraged the plot, though she denied any knowledge. Tonya accepted a plea deal in March 1994, admitting she helped conceal the crime after it happened. But a grand jury later found evidence she financed part of the attack using skating funds and participated in the planning to give herself an advantage. Gillooly, Stant, and Eckard served prison time, while Tonya received 3 years probation, a $160,000 fine, and a lifetime ban from competitive skating. Nancy recovered in time for the 1994 Winter Olympics, earning silver, but forever facing endless questions about Tonya Harding. Most of us won't ever have to deal with a live TV incident haunting us forever, but we all risk having our data stolen. I Googled myself and look what I found. There are socials, there's information about places that I've worked. Heck, there's probably even a Wikipedia article about me at this point. If you've ever wondered how scammers get your phone number or why your inbox is flooded with spam, this is why. There are companies called data brokers that sell your data. They do it without your consent, and they make billions selling it to marketers, scammers, and even stalkers. And while they're legally required to remove your info if you ask, they make the process confusing and hard on purpose. That is why I recommended today's sponsor, Aura, to my family and friends. They take care of the hard part, automatically removing your info from these sites and keeping it off. Aura monitors the web for data broker sites, automatically submitting opt-out requests to remove your information. If your data appears online or someone tries to access your accounts, Aura alerts you immediately and provides up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. You also get a free VPN with over 100 virtual locations, so you can browse privately and securely. Try Aura for free for 14 days at aura.com/abyssaldetective, or by clicking the link in the description and start reclaiming your data today. Mike Tyson bites Holyfield's ear off. On June 28, 1997, audiences poured into the Las Vegas MGM Grand Garden Arena for the heavyweight rematch of the century, Evander Holyfield versus Mike Tyson. Just 7 months earlier, Holyfield had stunned the boxing world by defeating Tyson with an 11th round TKO, despite entering as a major underdog. The rematch was already starting on a bad foot. Tyson and his team were not happy. The Nevada Athletic Commission had assigned referee Mitch Halpern, who officiated their first bout. Tyson was concerned that the referee was biased, pointing to some unpenalized head clashes in the first match. Days before the fight, Tyson got a new referee assigned, but now he had to follow through and get his vengeance. Holyfield controlled the early rounds of the rematch, managing to neutralize Tyson's aggression and keep him at bay. But in the second round, Holyfield's ducking maneuver caused an accidental headbutt that opened a deep cut over Tyson's right eye, and that's when it all went wrong. Tyson demanded that the headbutt be penalized, but the ref upheld it as unintentional, just like the first match. As the third round began, Tyson entered the ring without his mouthguard, prompting Lane to halt the fight momentarily to enforce compliance, but it wouldn't matter. At 2:24 of the third round, Tyson clinched Holyfield and bit off a 1-inch piece of his right ear, spitting it onto the canvas. Lane deducted 2 points but allowed the fight to continue after Holyfield received medical clearance. Seconds later, Tyson bit Holyfield's left ear during another clinch, prompting Lane to disqualify him entirely. Enraged by the whole situation, Tyson attempted to charge Holyfield's corner before security intervened. After the fight, Tyson justified his actions as retaliation for the unpenalized headbutts, which he felt was unfair. The Nevada Athletic Commission revoked Tyson's boxing license, fined him $3 million, and mandated psychiatric evaluation. Holyfield required reconstructive ear surgery but publicly forgave Tyson. Tyson's license was reinstated in October 1998, though his reputation never recovered. Balloon Boy Hoax. On October 15, 2009 at 11:29 a.m., Richard Heen called 911, his voice frantic as he reported his son Falcon was trapped inside a silver saucer-shaped object rapidly flying across the sky above Colorado.
It's a flying saucer.
It's a flying saucer.
Yeah.
And that's gone too, right?
That's correct.
How long is the flying saucer gone as well?
Yeah. About 20 minutes, I think.
They've both been missing for about 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
We gotta get my son.
Okay. Hang on just 1 second. Don't hang up, okay? Just a minute.
I'm going to ask all three of you to hang on just a minute because we have rather an incredible breaking news story that we're following right now, and this is coming to us out of Colorado. What you all see right there is an experimental aircraft that inside of which is a 6-year-old boy.
Emergency responders scrambled to his Fort Collins home as local news helicopters chased and tracked the path of this homemade helium balloon. By noon, cable workers broadcast live footage of the 20-foot-wide balloon drifting 7,000 feet above ground, with anchors speculating about the child trapped inside getting dangerously close to power lines. For nearly 2 hours, the balloon traveled 50 miles across 3 counties, diverting air traffic and mobilizing National Guard helicopters to try and help. Crowds gathered below, terrified that the balloon would fall and kill the boy. At 1:35 p.m., the craft crash-landed in a field northeast of Denver. Deputies rushed to access the balloon and free the boy, only to discover it was empty.
Sitting there open, but again, there's no child here.
The boy was not inside, so where the hell was he? Authorities interrogated the family for hours, getting as much information as possible for a full investigation. But then, at 4:14 p.m., a sheriff's deputy heard a shriek at the Heen home. Falcon emerged from the garage attic unharmed, telling the authorities he'd hidden after fearing punishment for playing near the balloon. In all media interviews, his mother was in tears, saying she thought he was dead. But thankfully, all disaster was averted. Almost. That evening, the family was giving an interview to CNN when Falcon suddenly blurted out the fatal words, "You guys said we did this for the show."
He's asking Falcon, did you hear us calling your name at any time? You did?
You did?
Why didn't you come out?
You guys said that we did this for the show.
Yeah.
The investigation ended up uncovering a highly elaborate staged plan. The Heens had built the balloon to pitch a reality TV series, filming their children throughout the process. Falcon was supposed to hide briefly in the basement, but he fell asleep in the attic instead. On October 18th, Larimer County Sheriff Jim Alderton officially declared the incident a hoax. Richard pleaded guilty to felony charges, serving 90 days in jail. Mayumi received 20 days for misdemeanor false reporting. The story generated 34 of Google's top 40 searches that day, with late-night shows and memes mocking the family even more. In 2020, Colorado Governor Jared Polis pardoned the Heens, though they have always maintained their innocence. Tacoma Narrows Bridge Collapse. In July 1940, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge opened in Washington, becoming the world's third longest suspension bridge of its kind. But just 4 months later, its strength was going to be tested by an unexpectedly strong storm.
Tacoma Bridge, Washington, opened only a few months ago, was built at a cost of over $6 million. But misfortune overtakes the great structure. These are some of the most amazing pictures ever recorded by a newsreel.
On November 7th, 1940, the bridge was being battered by 40-mile-per-hour winds. The bridge had become known as Galloping Gertie for its slightly concerning habit of swaying. But this time it was very different. Usually, the bridge would gently move up and down, but today the centerline was locked in place as the two halves violently twisted in opposite directions, bending up some 28 feet out of alignment. Leonard Coatsworth, an editor at the Tacoma News-Tribune, was caught up in the chaos. He scrambled from his car as chunks of concrete fell down around him, reluctantly abandoned his terrified dog, Tubby, inside. Barney Elliott and Harbin Monroe, owners of the Tacoma Camera Shop, grabbed their cameras and raced to the scene to capture the moment. Elliott took the north side, filming the buckled roadway and a University of Washington professor's failed attempt to rescue Tubby. Monroe took the south, capturing the insane twists of the bridge. But suddenly, a 600-foot chunk near the center tore free, crashing into Puget Sound below. 6 minutes later, the rest of the bridge collapsed, dragging the cables and steel into the water 180 feet below. Paramount Studios bought the color footage from the couple, converting them to black and white newsreels seen globally. Washington State reimbursed Coatsworth $814.40 for his lost vehicle and dog, while insurers covered 80% of the $5.2 million loss. Almost. $800,000 was illegally and fraudulently stolen by Agent Hallett French. The Federal Works Agency investigation said the bridge was designed poorly, unable to withstand strong winds, which pretty much everybody else saw coming a mile away. Bret Michaels' Tony's injury. At the 2009 Tony Awards, Bret Michaels took to the stage of Radio City Music Hall to sing Poison's Nothing But a Good Time alongside the Rock of Ages cast. But just as he left the stage following the performance, a heavy piece of the set was coming down and struck his head, knocking him to the ground. Cameras captured the collision on live TV, which host Neil Patrick Harris joked gave headbanging a whole new meaning. The initial medical evaluations revealed a fractured nose, a split lip requiring 3 stitches, and facial bruising. Michaels went back to touring shortly after the incident, but months later he was hospitalized with a life-threatening subarachnoid hemorrhage, a type of brain bleeding, followed by a warning stroke. His legal team believed that the Tony Awards injury weakened the blood vessels in his brain, creating a domino effect that nearly killed him. In March 2011, Michaels officially filed a lawsuit against CBS and Tony Award Productions, alleging producers failed to warn him about the moving scenery or provide safe exit instructions. Court documents revealed he'd specifically asked for stage directions beforehand, but was told to walk off the rear of the stage, which just happened to be leading him directly into the path of the descending backdrop. The suit accused the organizers of negligent blaming Michaels for missing his mark instead of addressing serious safety oversights. Because of the severity of the brain injury, Michaels was unable to tour the way he did before, and the fact that CBS had aired the accident footage, even making money from the virality of it, didn't help their case. After over a year of negotiations, both parties reached a confidential settlement in May 2012, with Michaels' attorney confirming an amicable resolution had been finalized. The terms have never been confirmed, and CBS and the Tonys have never admitted fault for the incident. Flaming Arrow. During the 2016 America's Got Talent quarterfinals, daredevil couple Ryan Stock and Amberlynn Walker were about to execute one of their highest-risk stunts yet. Stock positioned a metal tube down his throat with a target attached to its end. Amberlynn, his fiancée, climbed a ladder wielding a crossbow loaded with a flaming arrow. The plan was to fire the arrow into the target, guiding it through the tube to trigger a pyrotechnic display. As the stunt began, Stock swallowed a sword and arrow to demonstrate his impressive throat control and put the audience at ease. Then the stunt could begin. Amberlynn aimed a laser sight at the target, steadied her crossbow, lit the arrow, and pulled the trigger. But the arrow's wooden notch snapped mid-release, diverting its trajectory. Instead of entering the tube, the flaming arrow struck Stock's neck, embedding in his skin briefly before he knocked it away. When you look at the footage, you can see him gasping and staggering from the impact. The judges were horrified by what they witnessed as host Nick Cannon rushed to assess the damage. Stock insisted he was fine and unharmed, but the show couldn't go on. Simon Cowell refused to judge the act, insisting that he had to go to a hospital immediately. Backstage, the medics examined Stock. The arrow had narrowly missed major arteries, which would have proved fatal, leaving only minor burns and bruising. Amberlynn's aim was accurate. The faulty notch had almost killed him. Despite surviving unscathed, the duo was eliminated shortly after. They were determined to refine the act, even releasing footage of the stunt's intended execution to prove it would have worked. The incident remains one of AGT's most visceral live televised moments to this day. Level 3. Wetten, das accident. For over 3 decades, Wetten, das dominated Saturday night television in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, earning its reputation as Europe's most watched variety show. First launched in 1981, the show featured ordinary citizens attempting extraordinary stunts like juggling chainsaws, identifying smells through rubber boots, or balancing trucks on beer glasses. All the while, celebrity panels bet on their success. At its peak, it drew 20 million viewers for every single episode. But by 2010, that wasn't the case. The show was facing increasing pressure to retain audiences amid increasingly fragmented TV viewership. The critics accused producers of prioritizing spectacle over safety, with the stunts growing increasingly perilous. The lack of viewers meant the show had no choice but to go bigger and bigger. On December 4th, 2010, 23-year-old Samuel Koch, a drama student and amateur stuntman, arrived to perform a bet involving spring-loaded kangaroo boots. His challenge would be to somersault over 5 moving cars, including one driven by his own father. The segment began as expected. Wearing protective gear, Koch cleared the first 2 vehicles effortlessly. The third car was driven by his dad. As it accelerated, he launched into a flip, but lost balance mid-air, crashing face first onto the studio floor. The live broadcast cut to a shot of the stunned audience members as the host, Thomas Gottschalk, a fixture on Wetten, das since 1987, halted the show for the first time in its history. Koch, unconscious and bleeding, was rushed to surgery with spinal fractures. When he arrived, doctors confirmed he was paralyzed from the neck down. The fallout was immediate. Justin Bieber, slated to perform that night, canceled his appearance, tweeting, "Some things are more important than putting on a show." Media outlets and politicians condemned ZDF, the network behind Wetten Das, for greenlighting the stunt in the first place. While producers defended the show's legacy of risk-taking, viewership plummeted even more than it had. Troubled by the whole experience, Thomas Gottschalk quit the show entirely. His replacement could not revive interest, leading to the show's cancellation in 2014 after 34 years. Koch, now an actor and disability advocate, reflects on the accident as a turning point, but avoids bitterness about it. He focuses on the joys in his life. 1992 LA riots.
LAPD officers in the Rodney King beating case found not guilty on all counts except one. That announcement set off a firestorm of uncontrolled riots and violence that is still going on tonight, and it's been an ugly, terrible situation all night long.
On April 29, 1992, a Ventura County jury acquitted 4 LAPD officers of nearly all charges in the beating of Rodney King, a black motorist whose 81-second videotaped assault had sparked national outrage. The jury, which included no black members, found the officers' use of force justified, with one juror later stating King controlled the whole show by resisting arrest. Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley called the verdicts senseless, declaring, "The jury's verdict will never blind the world to what we saw on the videotape."
This is the activation of the emergency broadcast system for LA County.
Within hours, protests erupted across south-central Los Angeles. Crowds torched buildings, looted stores, and attacked motorists at intersections like Florence and Normandy, where live TV helicopters captured white truck driver Reginald Denny being pulled from his cab and beaten with a brick. Police retreated from the hotspots of the violence, leaving firefighters to battle the blazes while under sniper fire. Governor Pete Wilson had no choice but to deploy the National Guard as the arson and gunfire spread, forcing LAX to reroute flights. The chaos dominated all of the broadcasts. KTLA's aerial footage showed streets glowing with flames, while local stations replayed the King beating tape alongside the real-time unfolding violence. Residents watched in horror as looters ransacked Koreatown businesses and armed shop owners defended their properties. Emergency alerts interrupted programming, the first use of the emergency broadcast system for civil unrest in American history. By May 1st, 63 people had died, over 2,000 were injured, and $1 billion in damages was recorded. Rodney King, standing before cameras with fresh stitches, pleaded with everyone watching, "Can we all get along?" But his appeal did nothing.
I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along? Can we stop making it horrible for the older people and the kids?
The rage was much stronger than anybody could have expected. Fires raged for 3 more days, with National Guard troops and federal agents struggling to contain crowds. Networks were showing scenes of the burning buildings alongside clips of the Simi Valley trial, where jury members argued King's combative behavior made the beating justified. KNBC hostage-taking. On August 19, 1987, KNBC TV's 4 p.m. news broadcast began as it always did in Burbank, California, with consumer reporter David Horowitz discussing product safety. But then, at 4:42 p.m., a man later identified as Gary Stolman approached Horowitz live on air and pressed a handgun to his back. Viewers sat at home, watched in horror as Horowitz adjusted his glasses and calmly said, "We have someone on the set who's standing here and would like me to read this copy which he's just handed to me."
We have someone on the set who's standing here and would like me to read this copy which was just handed to me. You want to tell me your name or not?
Before the screen abruptly cut to an NBC logo. Of course, Stolman had no idea that he wasn't on the air. He kept asking the crew if this was being broadcast, but KNBC news director Tom Capra had terminated the broadcast within 28 seconds. Viewers saw only a technical difficulty screen, but the cameras kept rolling inside Studio One. Horowitz also had no idea the cameras were off and spent 7 minutes reading Stolman's handwritten manifesto alleging CIA cloning conspiracies and extraterrestrial interference. His fellow anchors Christy Wilde and John Beard were forced to maintain composure as they received police updates through earpieces informing them that SWAT teams were surrounding the set. But then, Stolman suddenly set the weapon down, revealing it as a plastic BB gun incapable of firing beyond 10 feet. John Beard swiftly grabbed the toy pistol as the police arrested Stolman. When he was let out, Stolman allegedly told authorities he wanted to expose his father's alleged cloning. In fact, Stolman was the son of a former KNBC pharmaceutical reporter. He had exploited his father's legacy to bypass security days earlier and waited for his moment to strike. KNBC resumed regular programming at 4:49 p.m. with an explanation of the interruption, but while the public saw only 28 seconds of the ordeal, the full 7-minute hostage situation remains locked away in NBC's archives. Stolman was later diagnosed with mental illness and committed to a psychiatric facility, avoiding prison only through a probation deal. The incident sparked immediate security overhauls at Los Angeles TV stations, with KCBS staff noting stricter access controls within hours. Horowitz later campaigned to ban realistic toy firearms. Tommy Cooper. On April 15, 1984, British comedian Tommy Cooper was on stage at Westminster's Her Majesty's Theatre performing during a live broadcast of Live from Her Majesty's. Midway through his signature magic comedy routine, Cooper donned a cloak with the help of an assistant, uttering his final words, "Thank you, love," before collapsing backward onto the stage. The audience erupted in laughter, interpreting the fall as part of his slapstick act, but it wasn't. Behind the curtain, the host and the director quickly realized that Cooper wasn't moving, only realizing labored breathing sounds. Sure enough, Cooper's son confirmed that his father's history of back problems made such a deliberate fall impossible. The show made an unplanned commercial break while crew members attempted CPR in the darkened wings. But paramedics couldn't access Cooper's body because of broadcast regulations, forcing the show to continue with all of the other acts performing in front of closed curtains. Comedians Les Dennis and Dustin G proceeded with their routine as stagehands worked frantically behind the scenes. During a second ad break, Cooper was loaded into an ambulance, but was pronounced dead on arrival at Westminster Hospital. The official confirmation was delayed until the next morning, although news bulletins that night led with the incident. The show had drawn in 12 million viewers, all of whom had seen Tommy Cooper die live on air. Tiananmen Square Tank Man. On April 15, 1989, the death of Hu Yaobang sparked student-led protests in Beijing's Tiananmen Square, with protesters demanding political transparency and anti-corruption measures to be put into effect. Within a month, over 1 million demonstrators filled the square, including hunger-striking students seeking an open dialogue with Communist Party officials. But by May, the protests were still ongoing, causing a major headache for the Chinese government, who decided they had to do something about it. Martial law was declared on May 20th, but soldiers initially hesitated to confront the protesters as ordered. When nothing changed by June, Deng Xiaoping grew tired of the situation and ordered a full military crackdown, whatever the cost. On his command, troops and tanks advanced toward the square after midnight, firing indiscriminately at the crowds blocking their path. Thousands of people were killed or injured by their own government. By the next morning, the square was cleared, with sporadic gunfire continuing to echo through Beijing. On June 5th, as foreign journalists documented the aftermath, a column of Type 59 tanks rumbled down Chang'an Avenue near the Beijing Hotel. An unarmed man in a white shirt and black trousers stepped into the road, holding 2 shopping bags. The lead tank swerved to avoid him, but he repeatedly blocked its path, preventing it from going further. After a brief exchange, 2 bystanders pulled him aside, and the tanks resumed their march. The standoff was captured live by CNN, becoming a global symbol of defiance against a corrupt government. Within China, authorities scrubbed all references to the incident from state media and public records, with Tankman's identity and fate remaining unknown. Footage of the confrontation was smuggled out via diplomatic channels, avoiding government censorship. While the images circulated internationally, Chinese state media portrayed the crackdown as a necessary measure to stabilize the country. Even now, 35 years later, domestic internet filters and education systems continue to suppress discussions of the event in China. Karl Wallenda. On March 22, 1978, 73-year-old Karl Wallenda prepared for a promotional tightrope walk between the twin towers of San Juan's Condado Plaza Hotel. Karl was the founder of the Flying Wallendas, a circus dynasty renowned for 7-person pyramids and death-defying acts since the 1920s. And he had spent the last 3 months planning this insane 121-foot-high stunt to advertise a Puerto Rico show featuring his granddaughter. Local crews were responsible for securing the 75-foot cable, but Wallenda personally inspected the rigging amid concerns about coastal winds. That was unusual for him. He usually trusted the crews without concern. But at 5:15 p.m., he began his death-defying walk. Wearing his signature red kerchief, Wallenda stepped onto the wire holding a 28-pound balancing pole. ABC News cameras gathered to track his progress as gusts reaching 34 miles per hour started attacking. Halfway across, the wire began shaking violently. Cameras caught the moment Wallenda crouched low, knees bent, fighting to stabilize himself. He lunged for the wire with both hands, but missed, plunging 10 stories onto a parked taxi. Bystanders rushed to help him. He was pronounced dead at Roosevelt Hospital. He had no chance of survival. Wallenda's career had been defined by risk, so it couldn't have been a huge shock to those who knew him. Puerto Rico stunt, however, diverged from his routine. The wire's anchor points lacked proper tension, and Wallenda's widow revealed he's fixated on falling in the weeks prior, a departure from his usual focus on walking the wire. It wasn't that he didn't trust the crews, he was just very, very unusually scared. Local news footage of the fall aired nationally, even showing the moment his body struck the vehicle. Investigators cited high winds and improper rigging as primary causes, though his widow and other family members have since speculated about Wallenda's unusual and irregular mental state. Level 4. Tetsushi Yanagida. On June 18, 2008, TV Miyazaki announcer Tetsushi Yanagida participated in a live broadcast segment of Jaga Jaga Tengoku, a Japanese variety show known for chaotic physical challenges. During a relay race staged in a rice paddy, Yanagida, who was not originally set to compete, spontaneously volunteered to join in. The shallow pool contained just 6 inches of water above dense mud, a detail which was visible to participants and crew, but not to the viewers at home. The cameras rolled as Yanagida attempted to headfirst dive into the paddy, severely misjudging the depth. His skull struck the solid mud layer just beneath the water, snapping his cervical spine upon impact. The immediate paralysis from the neck down left him motionless, his face submerged in the murky water. Initial laughter from his coworkers suggested they believed the whole incident to be staged, and while that might feel kind of weird, it would make sense since the show thrived on slapstick humor, but this was not a joke. And yet, for the next 15 seconds, crew members made the situation worse by pushing Yanagida's head deeper into the mud, trying to make it funnier for the audience at home. Unaware of his broken neck, they continued jeering as he struggled to breathe, his airway obstructed by the thick mud around him. The broadcast footage showed his occasional attempts to lift his head, followed by abrupt releases back into the dirt. It only dawned on them that something was wrong when Yanagida failed to respond to verbal cues. Suddenly realizing what happened, his coworkers hastily pulled him from the paddy, ending the segment prematurely. Emergency services rushed him to intensive care, where doctors confirmed irreversible paralysis. Miraculously, he survived the near-drowning incident, though medical staff later emphasized that even a few seconds longer underwater would have proven fatal for him. TV Miyazaki later confirmed Yanagita's gradual rehabilitation and eventual return to limited on-air duties after the incident, but the unedited footage preserved in broadcasts and online archives continues to circulate to this day. Level 5. High-Speed Chase. On September 28, 2012, Fox News was airing a live police chase in Phoenix, Arizona, which began when Rodon Romero, a 33-year-old parolee with a history of violent crimes, carjacked a red Dodge Caliber at gunpoint after crashing another stolen vehicle. Phoenix police chased Romero as he fled along Interstate 10, weaving through traffic at high speeds while firing at patrol cars and a Fox News helicopter filming overhead and broadcasting live to the nation at the same time. The network's footage showed Romero swerving across lanes and shoulders for nearly 90 minutes, with anchor Shepard Smith narrating the tense pursuit the whole time. He even said, "This makes me a little nervous," as the suspect abruptly stopped near the California border, adding, "You worry about how these things may end up." Right at that moment, Romero stumbled into a desert field, pulled a handgun from his waistband, and fatally shot himself in the head before producers could activate a 5-second broadcast delay. They had just broadcast a man's suicide live to the nation. Fox immediately cut to commercial, then returned with Smith apologizing for the footage, explaining the delay system had failed due to human error.
Some splaining to do. While we were taking that car chase and showing it to you live, when the guy pulled over and got out of the vehicle, we went on delay. And we really messed up. That didn't belong on TV, and I personally apologize to you that that happened.
That was also the network's official statement, blaming an unknown technician for the incident. After the broadcast, Romero's 3 children, aged 9 to 15, discovered the video online and recognized their father. The incident was so traumatic that their mother filed a 2013 lawsuit claiming the children suffered PTSD-like symptoms after viewing the suicide. Romero died instantly from the self-inflicted gunshot, but investigators confirmed that even though he had fired at officers and the news helicopter during the chase, he caused no injuries beyond psychological trauma to the viewers. Shu Guoli. On July 5, 2020, Lai Huili returned home with her daughter to the Hangzhou apartment she shared with her husband, Shu Guoli. But this would be the last time she was ever seen. The next day, Shu reported her missing and began a media blitz to find information on her. He was distraught, explaining that she had left in the night without her phone or ID. The public rallied around Shu, wanting to help him find his missing wife, but there was nothing they could do because she wasn't missing. She was dead. Unbeknownst to the public, Shu had purchased knives and cutting tools weeks earlier, concocting an elaborate plan to murder his wife and get away with it. On the night of July 4th, he dissolved sleeping pills in her milk. After she fell unconscious, he suffocated her with a pillow, sealed her mouth with tape, and dragged her body to the bedroom where he dismembered her remains in a meat grinder and flushed parts through the toilet while discarding others near their gated community. As the disappearance gained national attention, Shu participated in televised appeal on Zhejiang's Zhaoqiang hotline, insisting Lai had vanished during the night and portraying himself as a confused husband. While Shu was doing the media rounds, police were busy reviewing 6,000 hours of surveillance footage and interviewing 1,000 residents, finding no evidence Lai had left the premises at all. They had footage of her entering, but nothing of her leaving. As far as they knew, she was still there. On July 22nd, investigators drained the community's septic tank, a common place for killers to dump the remnants of their victims. Amidst the waste, they discovered human tissue fragments, with DNA analysis confirming they belonged to Lai. Confronted with the evidence, Shu had no choice but to confess to premeditated murder during his interrogation on July 23rd, citing family conflicts over finances and property. In fact, the murder was somewhat financially motivated. Court documents later revealed Shu had meticulously planned the killing because of economic pressures and marital discord, but he believed he could manipulate public opinion to ensure he got away with it all. Even when he was standing trial, Shu maintained the tools weren't purchased for murder, but the court dismissed it, pointing to his deliberate preparation and extremely vicious methods. Lai's family sought 2.71 million yuan in compensation, but Shu was sentenced to death for his crimes. Level 6. Hillsborough Disaster. On a crisp spring afternoon in 1989, 53,000 fans converged on Sheffield's Hillsborough Stadium for an FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. The sold-out match, a repeat of the previous year's game at the same venue, saw Liverpool supporters funneled through just 7 turnstiles into the Leppings Lane Terrace, their designated section. But what they and the cameras at home couldn't see is that behind the stands, the congestion was building rapidly as crowds bottlenecked in outdated entry points designed for much, much smaller numbers. At 2:52 p.m., with kickoff approaching, Police Commander David Duckenfield authorized the opening of Exit Gate C to alleviate pressure on those outside. Suddenly, hundreds of fans streamed through the breach, funneled by a single tunnel into already overcrowded standing pens 3 and 4. By 3 p.m., as the match began, spectators near the front were pressed against crush barriers and perimeter fencing, struggling to breathe. A fan's desperate attempt to climb the fence alerted cameramen, whose live broadcasts abruptly shifted from the game to cover the unfolding chaos. Viewers watched helplessly as bodies piled up near the pitch-side fencing. Police initially interpreted the crisis as a pitch invasion, delaying emergency response. Ambulances were blocked from entering the stadium until 3:17 p.m., after most victims had already suffered fatal compressive asphyxia. 94 people died at the scene, including teenagers crushed against steel barriers. 2 more died later, and a 97th victim remained in a coma until 1993. South Yorkshire Police immediately blamed drunken, ticketless fans, a narrative amplified by sections of the press, as well as Chief Superintendent Duckenfield, who falsely claimed supporters had forced Gate C open. For 27 years, families battled this official account, eventually unearthing evidence of altered police statements and suppressed safety reports that confirmed the giant cover-up that had taken place. The 2009 Hillsborough Independent Panel exposed systemic police malpractice, leading to the overturning of original accidental death verdicts. More investigations in 2014 concluded the 96 victims were unlawfully killed due to gross negligence by authorities. Though only one official faced criminal conviction, the findings forced massive UK-wide reforms. All stadiums replaced terraces with seating, while policing protocols adopted transparency measures through the 2023 Hillsborough Charter. The Bhopal disaster aftermath. On the night of December 2, 1984, workers at Union Carbide's pesticide plant in Bhopal, India, noticed erratic pressure readings in a tank storing methyl isocyanate, also known as MIC, a volatile chemical compound used for manufacturing insecticides. But, unbeknownst to them, water had infiltrated the tank through corroded pipes during a routine cleaning procedure, triggering an uncontrollable exothermic reaction. The safety systems were not functioning as they should. A gas scrubber had been deactivated for weeks, a refrigeration unit meant to cool the MIC was drained, and flare towers designed to burn off toxic gas were not active. By midnight, temperatures inside the tank soared to 200 degrees Celsius, a horrifying number that signaled crisis was about to unfold. At 12:50 a.m., a UCIL employee activated the internal alarm as gas seeped into control rooms, but the public siren was abruptly silenced to avoid unnecessary panic. Meanwhile, a milky white cloud of MIC, hydrogen cyanide, and other lethal gases drifted toward the city's densely populated slums, with no official warning to prepare them. When residents woke up, they were choking, their eyes and throats scorched. Thousands of people stumbled through darkened streets, vomiting and collapsing with no understanding of what was happening. Hospital corridors overflowed with victims gasping for air, bodies piled up in makeshift morgues. By dawn, entire neighborhoods lay strewn with human and animal corpses. Plant operators initially downplayed the crisis, telling police everything is okay as the death toll mounted, despite the blatant body count. Union Carbide CEO Warren Anderson arrived days later but was placed under house arrest and fled India within 24 hours after realizing what was going on. Government investigators later discovered serious systemic failures. The facility chronically understaffed, with staff protocols ignored to cut costs. Over 15,000 died immediately from the disaster, while more than 500,000 survivors suffered blindness, lung fibrosis, and neurological damage. Of those afflicted, around 25,000 died, with another 120,000 still affected by their ailments. Groundwater near the abandoned plant tested 40% above WHO toxicity limits, with carcinogens like mercury and chloroform detected. Children born to exposed parents faced 8-fold higher cancer risks and developmental disabilities. Decades later, $470 million in settlement funds remained stuck in muddy bureaucracy, with most victims receiving less than $500. Toxic waste pits still leached into soil, perpetuating birth defects and chronic illnesses. 8 former plant managers received 2-year suspended sentences in 2010, but no corporate executives faced trial. They got away with the whole thing, leaving behind a devastating legacy. Grenfell Tower Fire. At 12:54 a.m. on June 14, 2017, a 999 call reported smoke billowing from a 4th-floor flat in Grenfell Tower, a 24-story social housing block in North Kensington, London, a wealthy area of the city. Behelu Kebaid, woken up by a smoke alarm, found his Hotpoint fridge freezer engulfed in flames and alerted authorities. Firefighters arrived within 5 minutes, but the blaze had already broken through the kitchen window, setting fire to the building's newly installed external cladding. By 1:26 a.m., flames raced up the east facade, reaching the roof as shocked residents streamed live footage of the crisis. Rania Ibrahim, trapped on the 24th floor, broadcast a Facebook Live video capturing screams and thick smoke. Her final Snapchat message read, "Forgive me, everyone. Goodbye." Fire crews initially advised residents to stay put, a policy designed for single flat fires. But Grenfell's 2016 cladding, a plastic-cored aluminum composite, was basically acting as a chimney, channeling flames vertically and horizontally, allowing the flames to keep spreading. By 2:47 a.m., with 63 flats ablaze, commanders reversed course, ordering full evacuation, but it was too late. Only 36 people escaped after that drastic police shift. The inferno raged for 24 hours, leaving 72 dead, most of them working-class minorities. A 2018 inquiry pinpointed the fridge's faulty wiring as the ignition source, but scrutiny soon shifted to serious failures at every level. The cladding, chosen during an £8.7 million refurbishment, had failed fire safety tests, yet passed certification due to systematic dishonesty by manufacturers. Architects, contractors, and regulators ignored warnings. Residents had flagged exposed gas pipes and flammable materials months earlier but had been dismissed or ignored entirely. Phase 2 of the public inquiry, released in September 2024, exposed a chain of failures spanning decades. The Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea's building control team approved non-safety compliant designs, while the building managers dismissed residents who questioned the building's safety as troublemakers. Given that the tower was home to many working-class minorities in an extremely wealthy area, the comment ignited fury online, who believed the decisions were made intentionally. Survivors faced bureaucratic delays for rehousing, while bereaved families demanded accountability, a process still unfolding in 2025. Level 7. Maritza and Emilio Nunez. On January 18, 1993, a Telemundo news crew arrived at Our Lady Queen of Heaven Cemetery in North Lauderdale, Florida, to interview Emilio Nunez about his 15-year-old daughter, Yoandra's recent suicide. Reporter Ingrid Cruz and her cameraman Jorge Delgado filmed Emilio placing flowers at the grave while he claimed his ex-wife, Maritza Martin Munoz bore complete responsibility for the tragedy. But as the interview concluded, Maritza herself unexpectedly drove into the cemetery. Realizing what was happening, Emilio backed up and parked his car to prevent Maritza leaving. Recognizing his license plate, Maritza began walking toward her daughter's grave while ignoring Ingrid's repeated questions about the suicide. But then, without warning, Emilio fired a single shot into the back of Maritza's head with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. As she collapsed, he emptied the remaining 11 rounds into her body at close range. Jorge's camera, left recording on the ground, captured Ingrid screaming and fleeing while Maritza's 18-month-old son waited in her car, unaware of what was going on. The footage later aired nationally, showing Emilio fleeing the scene and sparking a multi-state manhunt. The investigation revealed the couple's volatile history. Yoandra had taken her own life in November 1992 while 13 weeks pregnant, with Emilio alleging Maritza allowed abuse by her new husband. But the authorities quickly dismissed those claims. Maritza had reportedly sought a restraining order against Emilio prior to her murder, fearing his threats to her life. At his 2000 trial, Emilio's defense argued the killing was a crime of passion provoked by Ingrid's questioning, but jurors convicted him of first-degree murder. He received a life sentence with parole eligibility after 25 years. Telemundo was widely criticized for airing the segment, though network officials maintained they had no prior indication of Emilio's violent intent, nor could they. Police officer murderer interview. 2 days after 20-year-old Cara Knott's body was found beneath a San Diego freeway bridge in December 1986, local NBC affiliate KCST-TV aired a segment featuring California Highway Patrol officer Craig Pyer offering safety advice to drivers. Reporter Rory Devine rode along with Pyer, who urged women to remain in their vehicles during breakdowns. Stay in the vehicle, lock all doors. Even if you have to wait all night, anything could happen. You could be raped, killed. Once you get into that other person's car, you're at their mercy. The segment triggered an overwhelming response from women. Over 20 women called authorities within days, reporting unsettling encounters with Pyer at the same isolated Mercy Road off-ramp where Knott died. They described being directed to exit the freeway after dark, subjected to prolonged stops lasting up to 90 minutes, and subjected to invasive questions. One woman said Pyer stroked her hair, others noted his creepy demeanor. Several had filed prior complaints about him, but CHP supervisors dismissed them due to his clean disciplinary record. In fact, what wasn't known to anybody was that Knott had been strangled and thrown from a bridge by a CHP officer. Investigators hadn't yet disclosed that key information, but now they had cause to be concerned. Pyer's patrol log showed he disproportionately stopped young women, often diverting them to the unlit off-ramp, a tactic he rarely used with male drivers. Fibers from his uniform matched those on Knott's clothes, and ropes in his patrol car resembled the murder weapon. Witnesses placed him near the crime scene, and his logbook entries for the night contained inconsistencies. And when they went back to look at the broadcast, they saw it. During the interview, visible scratches marred Pyer's face. When asked about them, he claimed they came from tripping into a fence at a CHP station. The explanation raised no immediate flags, but the timing aligned perfectly with Knott's murder. Forensic evidence later suggested she clawed at her attacker's face during the struggle. Authorities arrested Pyer on January 15, 1987, just 19 days after the murder. Prosecutors argued he'd used his position to lure Knott, then killed her to silence her complaints about his advances. At trial, the NBC interview became key evidence, juxtaposing his composed public persona with the brutality of the crime. Jurors convicted him of first-degree murder in 1988, making him the first on-duty CHP officer sentenced for murder. Craving more disturbing videos? Check out our Iceberg on the most disturbing things from each state, Iceberg.